everybody. It is Romania Black, and we are on episode 19 of ORB on the movements of the earth. I actually have a pretty long intro to record, so this intro is going to be long. I got a lot of comments to go through, so you're going to have to bear with me. But before we even get started on the comments, I wanted to talk about, as I was editing episode 18, I noticed two things. One, and I'm looking up at my notes as I'm saying this. One, Draka being the one with the candle and the torch at the very beginning when Schmidt and all them are surrounding her. Is that kind of a symbolism of her being in control of information? Could be. The other thing also was that in the sunshine scene where Schmidt is like, letting it all in, he lets the light soak onto him, and it's a really cool way of showing their differences in views and opinions. And I was like, oh, that's so, because, he views the sunshine as just illuminating, and then Draka has a different perspective on it. So I thought those were great things to point out. In addition, I also want to talk about a couple of comments. One comment is from episode 16. Tasto3204 says, no offense to the other heliocentrists, but Schmidt would probably have been Raffles' favorite. And I had not even thought about this, but I really like their explanation. So they're like, hear me out. Out of everyone who came after him, not because they are ideologically super aligned or anything, but because someone who openly champions their beliefs and is the first person on the continent to actively blow stuff up would be the coolest person alive to a 12-year-old. I was like, yeah, honestly, Raffle would probably think that Schmidt was freaking badass and cool. So, I mean, you are correct. That's a workable theory. I kind of like it. I now want all of the modern AUs where Raffle lives and Schmidt gets to meet him and Bodini is horrified by him. Because I really do think Bodini would be horrified by Schmidt. I think that Aksha it'd be like Aksha and Raffle in the middle. And Raffle's just like, oh my God, he's so cool. And Aksha's like, now calm down, Bodini. And Bodini's like, can you believe this? But it'd be that meme where it's the woman pointing at the cat. I'm going to edit that. It's going to be like the woman's pointing at the cat and the cat's like, it's going to be Bodini. And Aksha's like holding him back and Bodini's pointing at Schmidt. And Schmidt's like, that's what I want. That's what I need. I freaking love that. So for episode 17, Moomin says, I do have something to say about this episode since I am an atheist. And of course, the uncle was not the best example of humanity or atheism. I wouldn't call that being atheist. I would say that the uncle is just a selfish person. We're going to revisit this. Yes, I'm being a bit defensive here because I'm in an out group. And I really think it's important on this channel that we talk about different people's perspectives. Like, I'm a Christian, I'm a cisgender woman. However, I have friends that are of different religious beliefs. I have friends that are in different sects of the queer community. So I think that having those voices is really important to be discussed, especially in spaces like here on the internet where they are often silenced. So I think it's important that we talk about them. So they say, now, let's get to morality. If you ask me, we're just wired that way. We're social animals that exist in families, communities, groups. It is a survival tactic that was hardwired into us. It's easier to live when you help your neighbors. You may need their help later on. The work that is shared is easier work. To protect people you care about is protect the group because it takes a lot of people working together to protect everyone. Of course, this also works against us because if you are part of the out group, you are the enemy. This is so hardwired into our lizard brains that has become a cornerstone of current political policies. I mean, I could go on tangents, but I'll spare you that. They said, so does religious faith have anything to do with morality? I would say no. Sometimes the most Christ-like people I have known are the ones that are not Christians. Yup. Having said that, I know there are a lot of awesome Christians as well. People are complicated. I always view belief or a lack of belief as more of a journey that sometimes you need in order to survive this life. Well said. Now, for a clarification, agnostic is no knowledge of a God. This means that if there was knowledge that there was a God, then that's Gnostic. Atheist is no belief in the God or etc. So most atheists usually, if they are honest, would classify themselves as agnostic atheists. I guess agnostic is a weird term for me because in this day and age, to not know of any, when I think of no, I think of what you've heard, what you've experienced, what you've conversed with others. I feel like in that respect, agnostic beliefs, it's really hard because I'm like, how do you not know? How has no one ever told you? But know means like to know God is a different sort of scenario. So it's like the KN no versus just the NO. So it's interesting. I bring this up because of the uncle. Yes, he says that number one, God doesn't exist. There's no evidence for one to exist. Two, learn to think. I have to wonder if he was a deep thinker. Number three, discover your conviction in life. So his conviction is to stay alive by throwing others under a bus to live another day. Yeah, I do agree that I applaud the show for giving us an example of atheism, because you don't see that very often, even in shows where it's like about religious historical oppression. You don't see a lot of that side of it. The uncle is not the best example out of all of them, but that's the point. The point is he's not the best example. So thank you, Moomin, for expanding upon that. And then Jav Gamer had a comment for episode 17, and them along with, I'm going to say this username, and it's really long, FZENEBWBZTHBJETXKKBS. They both said there was a correction to the Draka timeline, so we need to point that out. When she was a kid, her tribe got by taking resources from places like destroyed villages. So essentially what their comment is saying is that I was a little misinformed, which happens sometimes, we're all human, with Draka's, her tribe were pillaging and plundering. Her dad got caught and died. And after that, Draka came up with the idea of using the fabrics and turning them into new items to sell because her dad died. That's why Antony was so like, you came up with this? Like, he was so kind of taken by that because she sort of created it. They don't say what the status of the tribe was like during that time, but we can assume it was at least worse off than they are now, considering the chief thanks her for the idea. So essentially one person had the idea of, hey, we need to pillage and plunder to survive. And they're like, yep, we can do that. And then we'll just equally separate everything out. And then Draka came up with the idea of the fabrics. And then they just kind of took that on instead because it was a much more safe and feasible idea. But episode 18 talks a lot about like the free market of ideas. And I've been watching a lot of videos. It's one of those like, it's supposed to be a holiday season. My holiday season is very much a chaotic blend of trying to play Christmas music and feel happy and watching videos about AI and feeling despair. So it's a very thin balance. And this channel kind of keeps me afloat in the middle. So yeah. But Jav Gamer says, one thing that you brought up that I've struggled with a lot in the last decade, especially last decade, that I want so badly is to believe in a free marketplace of ideas. That if everybody were allowed to share their thoughts, eventually the best ideas would come onto the top and progress could be made. The issue is that humanity is incredibly fallible. We don't think logically a lot of the time and are at risk for so many cognitive fallacies and biases. Ideally, everybody could come together and accurately assess a given situation and come to the best conclusion, but it's about 1,000% harder to change someone's mind than it is to convince them of something. What's the phrase? It takes 100 people to sway someone's opinion, but it takes one to convince them. Yeah. People will also select information that already supports their viewpoints and rejects others. So you get into like the silos. And in the age of social media, where everybody in the world gets a platform to spout conspiracy theory bullshit, it makes convincing people of basic facts so much harder. That's why I'm so anti-AI. I hate it. I don't ascribe to any of it. I ignore it. When I search on a search engine and they give me like the AI overview, I skip it. If I go into Google, first I skip the AI overview because it's not a search engine. It's just generating text based on previous text that it thinks is right, but who knows if it is or not? It doesn't. And then I'll skip the sponsored ads because F them. And then I'll go and try to find the actual source. I know there are other search engines. We should probably support them because they're not messed up. So and don't even get me started on creative AI, which is just stealing other people's work and processing it as your own. Garbage. The worst filth. Get out. I instantly disrespect you if you've created anything artistic through AI and marketed it as art. I instantly disrespect you. So yeah, or think less of you. Yeah. It just anytime you use AI to do something for you, that tells me you can't think of it yourself. If you're smart, you don't need AI. If you're not smart, maybe that's why you're using it. I don't know. I don't want to get into that. But anyway, it's going to lead to this point. And I don't know what the answer is. I want some of this to be regulated so that people stop falling into dangerous ways of thinking, but I don't know how to do that. I don't trust the government to police it, especially when you have one like we have now who's already trying to rewrite history. But the spreading of some misinformation is genuinely harmful and people get killed. All of this shit about vaccines has gotten probably hundreds of thousands of people killed in total, and people spreading conspiracy theories against climate change are actively going to get people killed. Ideally, I think spreading lies about that stuff as a public figure should be illegal in some way because it is, again, killing people, but I don't see how that can be feasibly done. Hank Green, who I adore, had a video that I watched right before recording this video while I was eating my dinner. I watch Hank Green while eating dinner. I'm like, watch anything that's like news related while eating dinner so I can think about it. But he had a video about AI data centers and how much water they use, which when you think about it is utterly terrifying considering like the water shortage crisis we were facing like 10 years ago. And we're like, we should probably worry about that. And tech bros are like, but the AI that's going to do something eventually that we don't actually know, just let's keep feeding it. And I'm like, oh, cool. Did you watch Gremlins? Did you watch Terminator? Did you read 1984, Mother Truckers? You probably did. And so I'm like, Anyway, the thing that struck me about that video was this conversation about trust and entities. And I think back to Attack on Titan, because in Attack on Titan, I've talked about it previously in this series, but without spoiling anything, there are moments in Attack on Titan where characters are pushed up against a wall and it's like, but if we all came together and worked together, we'd get out of it. And it's like, well, that's not going to happen because humans aren't like that. And so the answer at the end of the day kind of becomes, it's a constant struggle. There's no easy way out of it, but you have to keep fighting. And I think that Jon Stewart, I watch his videos a lot, he frames it best as the fighting doesn't have to be like hardcore protest every single second because we will wear out as humans and people are already exhausted. But the fight is little things like, no, I'm not going to use AI. Yes, I'm going to say it's garbage. No, I'm not going to give these tech corporations my money. So screw you. And just if enough people do it, then it will change what they do because all these corporations know and love is money. They don't care about anybody. It's just themselves. And the sooner we realize we can find ways to support companies that do care about people and stop the ones that don't, I think we're better off for it. So there's no easy answer. It's just you got to keep fighting the good fight and do what you can. So that's our soapbox of the day. This is the one platform where I can really, especially with this show, because it's talking about things that are resonating now in modern politics and modern, like just cultural systems, that I feel I can talk about it with you all. And it's really exciting. So thank you all for letting me talk with you about it. So if you're still here, we're going to get started because I've talked for 13 minutes. We might as well dive into episode 19, shall we? And so when we last left off, we had Yolenta getting introduced and she's been gone for a while. So I'm super freaking excited about that, but we're not going to wait anymore. I'm so excited to have Yolenta back in this. I cannot wait. We are going to start episode 19 of ORB on the movements of the earth. And we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and tally ho! Wow, I freaking love Yolenta. It's crazy how genetics are a thing. Genetics are a thing. So Yolenta has not strayed too far from the family tree, just in a different direction thanks to heliocentrism and thanks to one thing that I really like that stands out with this episode is it sort of is the relationships that you have can really define you. Like Aksha left such an impact on Yolenta, and that poor golden retriever of a human did not even realize how much of an impact that he made on her. And I like that. I would like to think the ghost of Bodini's like, oh, chopped liver, huh? Didn't rat you out, huh? I love it. I love it. But yes, so we get to meet Yolenta. Damn, her family genetics work pretty well because if we assumed that Novak was, let's say, 20 when he had Yolenta, she's 39 now. She's like 2 years older than me. Girl, doing well for having no moisturizing cream and anything to help them crow's feet. But Novak would be like nearly 60 60. He's doing pretty damn well for nearly 60. So that's crazy. But Brother Damien's like, what do I even do at this point? So that's so interesting. I like Draka being kind of interrogated by Yolenta. That was such a turn. Like, to see how much Yolenta has become like her father, only just in a different way. Because if you think about it, you have Yolenta, who talks about the problems with unwavering conviction, where she kind of points out the flaw, where she's like, if you have a conviction that does not waver or is not open to change or growth. It's so interesting how Yolenta describes herself as that. She's like, I have this conviction and I can't let go of it. And it's like Novak, right? For Yolenta, it has led her to kill people. It has led her to kill. It has led her to steal. It has led her to do acts that are violent. And we're going to talk about that. And the crazy thing is that she's doing it all for heliocentrism. And to basically say F the church is basically screw the orthodoxy. And then you have, on the other hand, you have Novak, her father, who is essentially doing the same thing, but the reasoning behind it is because he has that belief that this faith system would have provided safety for Yolenta. But it's kind of more than that. It's sort of, we've talked about this in previous episodes, but Novak kind of became a part of the system because the system benefited him. And he's like, if I don't have faith in the system, then what faith is there for me to be able to survive in this world? And then when Yolenta died, it kind of, has led him to become this drunk who doesn't really believe in anything, but he's haunted by the ghost of Raffle. This 12-year-old boy is shaking this man to his core. We're going to talk about it. But what's so fascinating is that Yolenta is telling Draka, you have to be open-minded. You have to be able to change. And what's so wild is Yolenta is admitting that she could not do that. She's like, I have this conviction that has led me to be able to kill others, to do unspeakable things. And I did it because I believe in it. But she herself, Yolenta, recognizes the irony because the very thing that she is fighting for, which is heliocentrism, the very thing she is fighting for is about an evolution of ideas. And I really don't think it's until she reads Aksha's work and fully is able to kind of tie it all together and come full circle with it that she truly is able to circumvent and be like, yeah, that was the whole point. It's so fascinating that this group of humans who are unrelenting in their conviction towards this one thing is doing the one thing that is all about open-mindedness and evolution of ideas and changing to pursue the truth and all of that. It's just, it's so good. It's wild. I love it. I love this conversation it's having here. Also, I love that as soon as she asks where the book, and Schmidt's like, about that. Anytime anyone in any context says the two words about that, immediately think the worst thing has happened. Just go ahead and imagine the worst thing has happened because it's probably not far off, right? I do like that Schmidt doesn't evade responsibility. He doesn't be like, well, she burned it or, something like that. He's like, due to my shortcomings, she got away with burning it. I like that Schmidt takes responsibility because I think he knows better. I think he knows that Yolenta would find out. It's wild. But also the moment that we don't see, he says, well, she's memorized the book's contents. And she's like, I'm Draka, I'm pleased to meet you. We don't see Yolenta's face. And that was such a Novak moment. I'm like, oh, just like father, like daughter. Just on different ends of the religious spectrum. And she's like, I'm going to need you to come with me. The fact that Yolenta essentially interrogates Draka is so crazy. But also what's crazy is the fact that Yolenta's interrogation is non-violent. Like, she threatens her with a sword. I know, she puts a sword to her throat, but she doesn't pull her teeth out. doesn't screw her thumbs, doesn't take her fingernails off. She puts her at sword point and says, "Test me, bitch." And then says, "Here's how it's going to work." I mean, as far as interrogation goes in this series, that's probably the tamest that it's been. Speaking of interrogation, we need to talk about a brand new character. It's Orb's version of Flock. That's all I'll say, which is Ash. Ash is one of the bishops, and he, or is he even a bishop? Is he a bishop? He's at least an inquisitor. I think it's telling that we don't see the blonde that was from 25 years ago. We don't see him at all. Who knows where he ended up? You know, I think that's telling in itself. But Ash is, I'm surprised Ash isn't doing Antony under the table with the way that he was talking through this. Pardon my language and crassness, but I'm sure Antony was stroking it to his rhetoric. To pardon my language and crassness, but it's not far off, I'm assured. But yeah, he's basically sharing Antony's ideals about using fear. About using fear as a power play to help keep the church. Now, to play devil's advocate for Antony, Antony seems more concerned about greed and money and things like that than the orthodoxy itself. Because if you recall, Antony's an interesting character in the sense that he doesn't care about the church so much as it gives him money and safety and power. That's really what he cares about it. He doesn't care about the faith aspect, which is the point of it. But he doesn't care about any of that. He's just out there for power and ambition and safety and security, which is why Draka's ideals were so resonating with him, because he's like, oh, you mean there's a way that I can financially secure myself so that I'm safe even if the peasants revolt? Tell me more, you know? Basically one of those things. He's like, how can I become Jeff Bezos? So then we have Ash here, who is torturing the guy by just basically waterlogging him, which is terrifying. I have grown such an affinity for Damien. I did not expect to really grow an affinity for Damien of all characters, but I kind of have, because of the whole series. We're in episode 19. Damien's been there for like the whole thing. Damien is like the one character aside from Novak that has been through the entire story. Damien and Novak have been the only characters so far that we've seen through the story in its entirety. They've been the only two. Since day one, with Raffle and Hubert and Pataki, they were the two that we've seen from episode 1 moving on. Like that, they're the two constants. So you kind of grow an affinity to him. Like Novak's such a layered character, and I feel so much for him because a large part of his character at this point is driven by his anguish at losing his daughter, or he thinks he's lost his daughter. You know that this show, you know, as well as I do, this show is gonna be angst town when it comes to Novak and Yolenta. My biggest thing is the show going to let them reunite in front of us? And it's either three things are going to happen. One of three things. I'm going to call it now. Either they are going to reunite right before she dies or he dies, and it's going to be the saddest thing in the world, and it's going to spur one of them to act post-mortem for the other. Two, this is probably the least likely, is that they're going to reunite and then ride off in the sunset together as father and daughter. That's like a 5% chance on that one. That's like the least likely. But the option they're probably going to do is that these two are going to literally be like crossing ships in the night, and they're going to miss each other, and we, the audience, are going to be like, they're right there. You father, daughter, see each other. Rah! Like, it's going to be one of those scenarios where they're so close to seeing one another, and it doesn't happen. This show is setting us up to be cruel. I'm like, don't do it, show. Don't you get this way. But with Father Damien or Brother Damien or Bishop Damien, whatever, I've grown this affinity to him because I feel like if you're an older person watching, you can kind of relate to what Father Damien is trying to tell Ash about this, because Ash is very much like angry badger, like, well, I've seen everything. I know what's going on. And Damien is talking from experience. He's like, well, I've seen some messed up stuff that you've not seen. Maybe we should take this thing into account. So he's like, why are you burning people at the stake again? Father Damien brings up a good point. He talks about how we're repeating repeating a past that was not successful. And it's very much kind of the logic where Ash is saying, like, well, but this is a method that works. And Father Damien's like, well, no, it doesn't work, actually. I kind of like this. It's sort of like a pseudo conversation, like current conversation. I grew up in a, rural area. And the big topic, like I've had people older than me, like my parents' age, be like, well, if they just brought back public hangings, we wouldn't have a problem. And I was like, yeah, I'm sorry, but if you are labeling yourself as a Christian and you talk about any type of death penalty or any type of violence towards another person, I'm like, did you read the commandments that Moses had to read? Do you believe in those too? Seems awfully hypocritical if you don't. So, but even beyond the religious aspect of it, I'm like, when people talk about like, well, back in the old wild west, I'm like, yeah, people died of dysentery at 17. Next. So I'm like, I get so frustrated. I feel like Ash's conversation is ironically pivoting to the younger audience rather than the older person. Ash's conversation is, well, in the past, 200 years ago, you know, the monks tried to be nice and do something nice for the peasants, and the peasants revolted and killed them. And the part about that argument, let's talk about that argument, because I had thoughts while it was going on. He's like, I serve under the Holy Father. I'm like, oh, do you now? I don't need authorization from a bishop like you. Damien, I wanted to defend Damien and be like, young whippersnapper, you don't talk to Damien that way. You don't talk to him like that. You give that man your respect. I wanted to defend Damien so much because Damien's just like, well, F you too. Like, you know, Ash is like, well, I'm operating under an executive order. I don't have to listen to you. And Damien's like, wow, F my drag, right? He said, and Damien says you're supposed to gently guide them towards recantation. And he's like, well, I tried all that and it was no use. He's like, have you forgotten history? 200 years ago, when monks taught them the error of their ways, the heretics responded by throwing stones. The minute you go soft on them, that's how they'll act. There is a logical fallacy in what Ash brings up here, and I want to talk about it with another series that I've watched on this channel, which is The Apothecary Diaries. In that series, I'm not going to give away anything in The Apothecary Diaries, but I read it for season 1. I read a book alongside it and we talked about it. But the book was about eunuchs in China, and you'll have to go watch Apothecary Diaries to see how that fits in. But it was about eunuchs in the Chinese like imperial royal palace up until like the early 20th century, which is wild to me. But it was talking from the eunuch's perspective of working in the imperial palace. And it kind of, reading that perspective puts Ash's historical factoid it kind of breaks it apart logically and makes it a fallacy. Because Ash's whole thing is, well, if you're nice to the peasants will only stone you in return. And Damien's like, do you even read, bro? Did you put that in ChatGPT and that's what it gave you? I love Damien's reaction of like, are you an idiot? Like, no, because that entire premise is so generalized and leaves out so many facets of the situation. Like, Damien is just kind of flabbergasted because Ash is like, well, the monks tried to teach them the errors of their ways. And I'm like, okay, if you're an oppressed population that has been through hell, and the oppressors that have done horrible things to you or have allowed these horrible things to happen to you comes over to you and slaps you on the wrist and goes, now don't do that again now. The moment they take off that shackle from you, do you think that they're going to react by being like, well, gee golly, mister, you just mainly like destroyed our population and brought all these travesties against our people. But since you told us how wrong we were and what we were doing against your authoritative power, I guess we'll just become better people and just hug and move on. No, they're not going to do that. No, why would they? You know, it's like everything Ash says kind of negates or leaves out the part about those people being oppressed and not taking into account why would a human react that way? That part of the story doesn't take anything into account to that. And Father Damien kind of calls him out. He's like, it's you who should read more history. He's like, that was only 200 years ago. He's like, what about 500 years ago when the archbishop once defended accused witches from a mob? And 400 years ago, a sorcerer rose up to become emperor. Who was the sorcerer that became emperor? I'm like, what? Excuse me? Interesting. He says the church of old treated those accused of heresy or sorcery with moderation. And then he says, and he's like, why? And I like that Ash is like, why are you so timid? And he's like, because I've seen shit. At this moment, the Reformation and the heretical groups that follow him, if we don't act now to defend the faith, then it's all going to come down. And he's like, and I like, is Damien a little condescending when he's like, I was young once too? A little bit. But I feel like what's interesting about this conversation is Damien brings up the counter of, okay, well, 200 years ago that happened. But even before then, there were acts of kindness that had benefits. Let's not forget those. The thing that's interesting in coming out of this conversation is that humans, we cherry pick. It's like what we talked about with cherry picking the verses. We're cherry picking histories and cherry picking what histories best align with our own agendas, right? So that's just the human experience is almost maddening sometimes. It's maddening because we will, as humans, to win an argument, we will do whatever it takes to win that argument. That's why Yolinta's like, it's so easy to hold on to those convictions, but you need to let go. Because otherwise you're not going to grow and you're not going to be open-minded and you're not going to evolve, right? If you stay that way. I think that's one of the points that they get here is that this refusal to advance and evolve just keeps us stagnant as people. And that's a problem, right? We should, and it's so easy to do because I even encounter it on my own channels. I have a tendency to I feel a little defensive when people call out my opinions or my takes on things. Because I'm kind of like what person wants to, feel like they're wrong? Nobody wants to. But you have to kind of, it's hard, but you have to temper yourself to those other perspectives being put in front of you. I do like that Damien says, look, I was around when this burning and torture methods were going on 35 years ago. He's like, they didn't change the world for the better then. Why would you think that they would do that now? And that's kind of the problem. A lot of times when people bring up like, let's go back to the ways of the past. I'm like, but why did you change those ways to begin with? Was it better back then? Or, how are you looking at the picture? Would it really be better? He's like, the church orthodoxy has grown remarkably weaker, but what good will conflict do? And I think Damien has a good point. He's kind of like, if you think back, the methods you're talking about, Ash, were the reasons why the heretics formed the Liberation Front in the first place. They got tired of it. They got fed up. And it's like, if you start bringing this back now, how do you think that's going to solve the problem? It's not. It's just going to repeat what happened before and create this cycle. He's like, I like Damien saying there can be no salvation built on terror and torture. Love those with different beliefs. And the one heretic spits on him. Oh, check that sound off. He spits on him. And they're like, submerge him. I was like, and poor Father Damien's like, well, no. I like that Father Damien very much does the turn the other cheek where he's like, whatever, But I do agree with him. I feel like Father Damien's method is harder, but it's in the long run the more effective route. But again, that's our perspective, Ash has his reasons for thinking the way that he does. And one of Ash's reasons is that he cites Schmidt's attack on the chamber. And he's like, they stole a book that was confiscated. He said that we got it about a year ago. Now, okay, so they got this book about a year ago about heliocentrism, and Damien starts having war flashbacks with helicopter blades in the distance. But they said a year ago, they found it in an abandoned church. One thing about this series that is so insane, that is so crazy, is that the whole Grabowski thing, the whole Father Grabowski taking the backs of their heads that were tattooed with the pages, I thought going into this, that was going to be a whole thing, a whole section of this. I thought by episode 19, we'd still be on that. It just happened off screen. And Father Grabowski, I'm sure, is the book in the abandoned church. You spent how long making a book out of those tattooed heads and then you left it in an abandoned church? But the thing of it is, we don't know what happened to those tattooed men. We don't know if they were arrested, tried as heretics. Was Father Grabowski tried as a heretic? We don't know. Did Father Grabowski do anything? Is that the book Father Grabowski translated? We don't know. Is there another copy of the book somewhere? We don't know. The show has not told us. That's the crazy part. The show hasn't told us. But what we do know is that he's like, we confiscated the book nearly a year ago, and I'm told it was found in an abandoned church. The book seems fairly old, but there was no indication of who wrote it or when. And the thing that gets me is the whole give 10% of the proceeds to Pataki. That means that Bodini took all the notes and his own writing, put it on the people's heads tattooed, and Grabowski copied it word for word from the tattooed heads. Grabowski wouldn't know what the other stuff meant. He's just like, I don't know, I'll write it down. I don't know. But that meant that Bodini did listen to what Aksha said and kept it in. And I'm like, freaking, I almost cried and got emotional whenever Yolanta saw Aksha again. That almost got me, and I almost started crying, and I wouldn't blame anybody that did in this episode. Give 10% to Pataki. But Pataki died. I mean, at least we get confirmation that Pataki died. At least we got confirmation of that. Like, that's a dead end. That's done. But Damien, the other thing that this episode teaches us that is so important is about telling our stories and putting that knowledge out there. And our world that we live in now is so crazy because there's this fine line between having to document things so that that history is there to be passed down and oversharing. Like, there's a really big problem. I have a lot of problem with my students oversharing. Like, they tell me too much. And I'm not a licensed counselor. I'm not a licensed grief counselor. I have a certification in conflict resolution as a mediator, but that's mediation. That's not counseling. They're not the same thing. So it's like, I can do things to a point for conflict resolution, but I can't be a social worker. You know, it's a whole different skill set. And so it's crazy that they're talking here about, like, if Father Damien, if Damien had not told Ash about what he knew, the story would not have moved any further than this probably. But the fact that, like, it's critical that Ash understand the history of this entire incident because it ties into the whole story and heliocentrism. If Father Damien dies, Ash is the one that's left with that knowledge, which is so crazy. The idea of reading and writing being a miracle is so understated. It cannot be understated enough. Because if you think about oral tradition is a thing, but it only goes so far. And this episode is really proving that. So it's crazy. And so he's like, Pataki was a man who was arrested for researching heliocentrism. Years later, it led to the death of his pupil and his adopted son. Yeah, it led to the death of them. And then he's like, why after all these years? Who could have written it? He's like, was it the two young men from the village? I loved it. I love that even Damien's like, was it those two men that were together in the village? I like he didn't just say Bodini. He didn't just say Aksha. They are a set. They come as a pair. They're like salt and pepper shaker. You get it. They died 25 years ago too. And he's like, well, do you know of anyone? He's like, I know a man with cosmology. Okay, so then we cut to Novak. Novak has Raffles' necklace. He has the necklace given. Well, technically it was Hubert's necklace. He has Hubert's necklace given to him, and he stabs it over and over again. I love this idea with Novak of taking a stab at heliocentrism. There's something kind of cool about the symbolism with it, because with him taking a stab at heliocentrism, it's literally like, is it a representation of him trying to whittle away at his fear and misunderstanding and trying to get to the bottom of it? Is it him actually trying to, like, whittle away and understand why they were so obsessed with heliocentrism? Is it him trying to, like, Does he hold on to the ghost of that necklace because it reminds him of his daughter and his convictions? Again, Yolenta says you need to let go of those, but her and Novak, like father, like daughter, are great examples of not being able to do that. A former inquisitor. Yikes. He's just sitting there stabbing at a table. This little wooden necklace. So Novak has basically been drinking himself into a stupor. He has the red nose and the rosacea cheeks that are indicating of alcoholism. He also has gained some he's also portly now. He's gained some weight. He's not gray. That damn blonde hair held up, but he's gained some weight and stuff. I'm sure. My thing is, Novak at his peak could do really well against Aksha, but this Novak, would he be good against Schmidt in a fight? Do I think him and Schmidt might fight at some point? Probably. I don't know. I don't know how good of a fighter Ash is. Probably not very much. But yeah. And he's like, I don't care. He's like, are you? Buy me a drink. Sing me a song. But no, it's so crazy. So now we know Novak is the one in the OP, probably with the necklace. And I like that Novak's like, I basically don't do jobs anymore. And that's when he brings up the stuff with heliocentrism. He's like, it can't be. All was said and done. It's so crazy. He says he brought it to an end a long time ago, but I'm like, bitch, you've been stewing on this for 25 years. For 25 years, you've been stewing on this. It has not been brought to an end. You still have the necklace. You just know. Also, can we talk about the imagery of him at the table? I'm going to take a screenshot of it. The imagery of him at the table slumped over. There is so much in this one picture alone with the symbolism. The table is spherical like the earth. It is an orb. It's spherical like the orb. He has the orb in front of him on the table, which is like the star in the night sky or the moon orbiting the earth. And then he's hunched over it like he is across the table when he thinks his daughter is dead back in episode 16. So all the symbolism in that one shot, I live for it. I also love that shot of him where he's like, can we also talk about something else too? Can we talk about something that is a quite rarity in this series at this point? I had no issue seeing people in this episode. It was all daylight. Everything was in daylight. It was easy to see everyone. I loved it. It was great. It also, I don't know if that's the sun being like the dawning of a new day. It's a new arc. Maybe our middle arc was in the darkness and that was just it. But so yeah, he agrees to help. And this is the tragedy. He asks for information about the Heretic Liberation Front. He's like, there's conflicting information, but the leader is a woman. And he's like, well, how tragic. She could have lived a safer life. And I'm like, oh my God, you don't know what you're saying, Novak. You have no clue. And then when they say that she had lost a tooth, he says careless. Now, losing a tooth. Do you think that Novak believes that she was tortured? Probably. Does he know his daughter was tortured? No. Does he know his daughter lost a tooth? No. That's the friggin' tragedy of this whole conversation. He has no clue they're talking about Yolenta. That's why I'm like, oh, show, are you going to do the really heartless thing and make him find out the last minute before she dies? Or is he going to find out and help her? Or are they never going to find out? Like, what? I feel like there is a part of me that has some hope that if he finds out his daughter's alive and that she's the leader, he will do something to help her. There's like a tiny sliver of me that believes that's a possibility, because otherwise, if he finds out she's alive and he has access to help her, why would he like turn her in to have her die? He's not going to do that. So I don't know though. He's like, why would an organization that frees heretics go after a book? I loved this conversation, like the one he has with Ash. I love his advice to Ash where he says, when you reach a dead end, rethink your assumptions. That's actually not bad advice. That's actually not bad. He's like, when you get to a dead end, go back and rethink the stuff you don't know all about. Maybe that's where you're wrong. Maybe that's why you have a dead end. That's not bad advice at all. I was like, oh, damn. Okay, Novak, you're drunk, but you've got some advice. He's like, assuming that liberating heretics is not their goal, it's probably to overthrow the orthodoxy. So the book would be an effective tool for that. And then I like this conversation too about books being an efficient way to change people's ways of thinking. That's why people in power don't want you to read or go to school or learn things, because then you'll be smart and then you won't be persuaded by the bullshit they say. I mean, it's 20 years ago when I was in graduate school for my English degree. 20 years ago, I took a class on, it was like graphic marketing. We did it on graphic marketing, and it completely changed my life. Like, it was not a political class at all. It wasn't political at all. We made flyers and we made websites. We did coding, like we did some HTML coding, which, 20 years ago, it's outdated as hell now. It wouldn't be of any use to me now, but we did lots of marketing things. And one of the things we focused on in that class was visual rhetoric, and how the images we see persuade us, and how, like typeface is persuading, font is persuading, organization on a page is persuading, the colors you use are persuading, how you organize a screenshot and things on there is persuasion. Like, it's one of those things. But the thing I took most away from that class was our instructor said, once you've seen it, you can't unsee it. Like, whenever I look at a car commercial or an advertisement, or I'm not on TikTok, but anytime I see influencers talking about like the TikTok influencers that are trying to like persuade you to buy something, I'm a salesman's nightmare, because I can look at that and go, oh, well, you're just doing that and that because you know that that'll be effective and you're persuading with that. No. Okay. It's literally learning marketing rhetoric is the best de-influencer to get you to buy stuff. It's like, if you're trying to de-influence yourself from buying things or controlling your budget, learn about marketing and the rhetoric that's used, because you can't unsee it. And then you just look at it and you go, oh, you're not going to manipulate me with that. No. Books are a way of changing people's thinking. And there is something to it, right? Because when Novak says here, he says far more than traveling to preach. I mean, books are more widespread. They meet audiences faster. They disseminate information in a more broader spectrum than one person talking. Although this is back before social media and the internet, Novak's thinking like, books can be distributed mass to worldwide audiences, whereas one person traveling, they didn't have the technology to record them or to show them. So yeah, there was that difference. Now, it's a little bit differently. Now, here's the thing. It's so funny how far we've come. We've almost like flipped the script, because before, Novak's saying, well, it's easier to persuade through rhetoric that's posted, which is still true. But he says, more than a traveling person that's just speaking. Now I feel like the thing that's frustrating is that a lot of people put more faith in the traveling preacher than the book. And that's for better or for worse. There's instances where both things are true. I'm like, there are times where I will look at a propaganda post on social media that I know is fake, because I know I have access to the information about it. But then I'll hear someone talking about it face to face and I'll be like, oh, I trust them more. And then the opposite will hold true. I will see somebody talking, but then I'll read something that contradicts what they said and I'll be like, oh, well, then you're full of crap. And so we live in a world where things are like both at once, and that just makes it harder to make a decision. So a lot of people are just burnt out, and it's like, but you can't quit fighting. You can't quit fighting. Even little fights. Win little fights every day. Don't quit fighting. An inquisitor should be well aware of the latest technology. I like that he's been keeping up, even though he claims to be a drunk and a washed out guy. He talks about the printing press. Also, this line, Novak's just speaking the one-liners. Novak's speaking the one-liners this episode. New technology is always used for evil first. In my head, I'm like, let's find ways to contradict that. But then I'm like, uh-oh. Because I'm trying to think of ways to counter that, because it's such a cynical view. But then I think of different examples and I'm like, well, but he's not totally wrong. But I think the one thing to add on to his views are, yes, new technologies. I feel like people find an evil way to use it the quickest, right? Because those people are horrible and they're not thinking of constructive ways to help others. They're just thinking of hurting others, and it's easier to hurt someone than to help them, oftentimes. So I feel like the phrase should be new technology is always used for evil first, but there may be more work going into it to be used to help others. I don't know. I feel like I don't want to adhere to the cynicism of Novak's phrasing, but I can't argue with him in some points. I'm like, yeah, that's kind of true in a sense. So it's like mass producing the books. I wish under different circumstances that Novak, Bodini, and Aksha could have been in the same room having conversations. I think if in another time, I think Novak and Bodini could have had some really interesting conversations, which is why it's such a shame that all of this stuff is going on, because you two could have had amazing conversations, but we can't have that because of what's been going on. So yeah, he's like, go find out where all the printing presses are and that'll start your trail. See where they found all the pieces. And Ash is like, wow, I underestimated you. And he's like, those people are being manipulated. They're victims in a way. I think the true enemy is not them. And I think he says that because he believes that his daughter is also one of those victims. And so he doesn't want to say that they're the problem. It's a good way of deflecting. Like in his mind, his daughter is still a pure innocent person, that she got tangled up with the wrong people. And it's not her fault the heliocentrism led her to her death. So he's like, it's my mission. He's just chipping away at that model. It's my fate. As long as I live, I'm going to follow them as far as it takes. Until the root of all evil, until I erase heliocentrism once and for all. That shot of Novak is amazing. It's so good. It's so good. And the wild thing is, Novak has this mission to erase heliocentrism, and Yolenta has this mission to make it known. These two opposing forces that should be just hand in hand is it's peak cinema. It's so good. It's so good. So yeah, so then we have Yolenta questioning Draka, saying, why do you want this? And Draka's like, I want 20% of your profits, asking for 10% more than Bataki. How dare. She's like, I'll just give me, will you consider the 20%? And Yolenta's like, we ain't making money off of this. I feel like there is an eeriness to Yolenta in this episode. Like an eerie knowing. She just has this vibe about her that is like, it's the vibe of martyrdom. It's the vibe of martyrdom. You know, Raffle had the vibe of martyrdom. Aksha had the vibe of martyrdom. Bodini, I guess, had it. And Yolenta has it. Yolenta has that vibe of, I know I'm going to die doing this quest, but I owe it to Aksha to see it through. Just like how Raffle was like, I owe it to Hubert to see it through. And Bodini and Aksha were like, we owe it to each other to see it through. Like, she just has that air of, I'm not going to make money because I'm not going to be around to see the benefits of it. And I'm like, I get that vibe so much. And I do love that she's like, that was likely written by an old friend of mine. Her remembering Aksha. Here's the thing, too. She has this sword. Yolenta has this sword. She's killed people. Like her dad. Her and her father have both killed people for the sake of their beliefs. Which, apples not falling far from trees. Novak is 60, nearly. So, or older. If he was older when he had her, he could be older than 60. He's not in rare form. Is Yolenta going to fight her father? Maybe. Is she going to fight Ash? I don't know. I could see it, but I don't know. But she has that sword. I don't want to treat this as a moneymaker. It means more to me than that. And so I like that she takes her out to show her the stars. That was really pretty too. I love them looking at the planets and looking at Saturn. And then again, I don't know if it's going to tie to the young man that sees the stars as well in the OP. I don't know. But that shot of her when she looks up at the sky is kind of like Novak. Oh, it's so good. She's like, when I was 9, I saw Saturn. And then 5 years later, I encountered heliocentrism. Then we cut to 6 years later. So when she was, she says 6 years later. So when she was 20, I killed someone for the first time. And it shows her holding either a knife or a sword. Yeah, it shows it shows the side of her being bloodied and holding it. I don't want to imagine the circumstance she had to kill someone at age 20. I don't want to imagine it. Nope. But that's when, 19 years ago, she kind of started this front. And she's like, I've met you now at age 39. And it's all come full circle. That was another foreshadowing moment whenever a character's like, oh, wow, it's all come full circle. I'm like, that's like a cycle of life. I'm like, Yolenta, I don't want you getting any ideas about dying now. Please don't do that. But I think she is. The reason is likely that it's the furthest from the sun. A planet's speed differs. The universe is governed by a single order. The heliocentric theory that you read gives you a peek at God's greatness. I did kind of like Draka's little like nervous sweat drop because Draka is atheist and she's just kind of like, she's kind of like, oh, you don't say, you know. I feel like Draka's like, wow, I've got all these people with differing religious views all around me, which, you know, I kind of think it's kind of cool that Schmidt would be all about Yolenta because she's against the church even though she's faithful. So she's like, what are you trying to say? She's like, I'm showing you how this inspires me. She's like, I want you to be inspired because you're the only other person who's read that book who I can share my knowledge of heliocentrism. And we've crossed paths. I love that she recognizes kind of the significance of their fate, that they've met one another. And she's like, she's like, no meeting is by chance. Because if you think about it, she's probably thinking back to the one inquisitor that saved her life. She's like, no meeting is by chance. My meeting of Akshay and Badini was not by chance. It was meant to happen. Everything that's in motion, she's like, we're in motion with the earth. It's meant to be. She's like, what about your own actions? You kill people, free heretics, and disrupt the social order. What does she say there? She asks, like, you killed people. She's like, is that something to be proud of? And I think she's trying to go, like, Draka's trying to goad Yolenta in a corner. And Yolenta's like, no, I know what I'm doing is wrong. Which I kind of like. Here's the difference. Yolenta and Novak are very similar in that they are so hardcore tied to their convictions that they won't let go. They won't change or evolve. And it's led them down these paths that they've lived on. But the difference is Novak believes what he's doing is right. Novak believes that what he is doing is the correct procedure and that it's his duty and his right and his life goal to see it through. Yolenta knows what she's doing is flawed. She knows what she's doing has a lot of problems, but she can't stop. She's convicted, and that's all there is to it. Her only thing is she's like, I have no second thoughts. She's like, I'm simply reclaiming the freedom and life that the church stole from me. In her mind, she's like, there's no point for me. I'm too far gone. It's too late for me. But she's like, I can tell you these things so that you don't end up in the same boat as I did. And I love the symbolism of her hands when she shows her hands and they're calloused and rough and scraped because she doesn't have her father's gloves on. Like, so good. So freaking good. Yep. And so she's like, and with it, my father and my friends. I like that she includes her father, being like, it stole my father from me and my friends. Her and Akshay and Badini, so cute. And she's like, but aren't you doing the same? She's like, this isn't limited to religion. Doesn't it occur among scholars as well? And she's like, no. She's like, maybe you're right, but I've killed so many times now. When the truth is your shield, violence can definitely accelerate, which we saw with Novak. How many times? Right? Crazy how similar they are there. I have blind faith in the authority of heliocentrism. Her father has blind faith in the authority of the orthodoxy. Like they both have blind faith in differing systems, but to a similar degree. Those who serve me may have ceased thinking too. That may be inevitable. I love that shot of her just kind of like staring at the sun. She's so much like her dad, but in such a different way. It's so interesting. I'm all about the genealogy of shows. Logical thinking requires a set of assumptions, which goes back to her father's talk. Her father's like, when you reach a dead end, go back to those assumptions and think them through. She's saying here, if you're going to be logical, you're going to have to assume some things because you won't have all of the answers. So you got to think, okay, what do I not know that I think is right, and go from there. It's a fundamental limit of human reason. Whenever we think, assumptions of some kind occur, and those eventually become authority. Because yeah, she's like, we fill in the gaps with how we think things should be. And eventually they become the authority. There was a really interesting article that I had read talking about how technology becomes nature. And that was really crazy. And again, AI terrifies me. That's why I'm like resisting it as much as I can, and why I encourage people to do so, because the article talked about how, you know, in the past, before GPS occurred, you had maps. Maps were how you found things. You had maps and directions and guides and things that were like physical paper things, and that's how you navigated. And the technology came around where you didn't need the maps anymore. And so you could use GPS to find where you are. And there's an argument where some people are like, oh, well, that's destroyed our sense of direction because people rely on the technology now. You can't locate anything. You get lost. And that's true. But here's the scary thing. The people making maps no longer make maps because they're an obsolete technology. Now we rely. That technology becomes second nature to us. We rely on it. We think it's like breathing. We just put it in maps. Look up on your electronic thing how to go there. You don't look at a map anymore. And our way of thinking has altered because of it. It's an assumption that this technology is going to take me to my destination. But that assumption becomes the authority. And that's kind of what she's talking about here, which is why stuff like AI is scary, because once you start making it the authority, your brain patterns are going to change around that. And that's pretty scary. That's pretty scary when you think about it. And whether or not you want that or not. She's like, perhaps none of us can escape that framework. It's terrifying. The passion that runs beneath those conditions travels a trajectory that can be reckless. Yeah, we've seen that those all series. It can make beautiful accomplishments or grotesque tragedies. I mean, this series has basically been that. And I like how Draka is like, well, how do we know what you're doing is not the tragedy or the beauty? And she's like, well, because my freedom lies at my destination. And she's like, how do you define freedom? The ability to ask that. Oh, I love that so much. The ability to ask it. The fact that you have freedom is the ability to say you have freedoms. That's so powerful. The moment you can't question whether or not you have freedoms or not, that's when you're in trouble. That's when you're in trouble. I'm like, ugh. And she's like, I don't want you to end up like me. And so Schmidt and Free decide that they just came to get the typefaces. The printing press is next. And the moment that Free was like, our next stop is the final destination of our most important mission. And they're like, where is that? And he's like, oh, well, they're not going to tell us. But I'm like, oh, final destination? Oh, I know we have 6 episodes left. Don't try to play games with me. And she's like, I don't plan to profit from this book. I like Yolenta said she'd give her the printing press, though. She's like, I'm not someone who's going to, swindle you. I'm not going to give you money. But I'm going to give you a way to earn money, which is right up Draka's alley. Draka's like, yes, please, that'll do. And then I'm not going to lie, y'all. The moment she started telling the book, she's like, I can't wait to see my old friend again. And we see her like gnarled hands. And she says the first couple lines. And Yolenta hears them. And it's like she goes back to Aksha and imagining him sitting there talking to her. That really got me. That got me so hard. If you cried in that moment, I wouldn't blame you. So they stayed up all night writing the book. And she's like, yes, reading and writing are miracles. Because, yeah, that's literally what's happened. If Draka hadn't read the book and remembered it and Yolenta hadn't wrote it down, we wouldn't be here. The story would be over. That would be it. So, so good. And so, yeah. And she's like, she's like, what does she say there? She says, it is important. Sometimes you meet something that makes you forget those convictions. You should value those feelings too. That's such a good phrase to say, because if you think about it, that's like Bodini and Aksha. Bodini had all these convictions. And then after meeting Aksha, he changed, which made all the difference in the world, right? And she's like, otherwise, she's like, you're going to end up like me. It's so fascinating to see that you have a character like Raffle and Bodini who changed their convictions, Aksha who changed their convictions, and the impact it has. And then you have Yolenta who's not able to change your convictions and is just like leading this one party down this route. It's so interesting to me. Oh my gosh, y'all, this episode. I have talked for quite some time about this, but for good reason. Oh my gosh, what an episode. Y'all, I freaking love it. I cannot wait to hear your thoughts down below. This series, mwah. We only have 6 episodes left. I'm not ready for that. No. Anyway, I hope you all have an amazing week. Please stay safe, take care, and I'll be back very soon with episode 20 of ORB on the movements of the earth. And I'll see you there. Bye.